Welcome to the Innovative Leader Podcast, featuring Christy Geiger, Executive Coach with Synergy Strategies, and David Phillips, Professor, Consultant, and Coach. Hey, welcome back to the Innovative Leader Podcast. We're glad you're with us, and we have been up and down a little bit this month. There's been a lot going on with vacations and things like that, family time. So we're back, and we hope you're going to enjoy this episode. Today, we're going to talk about this idea of things that we tend to permit as leaders that limit our progress, that limit our ability to move forward. Christy had a call this week, and the person referenced a quote that what you permit, you promote. And so that goes along with, there are several versions of that. The one that is to me is related is what you celebrate gets repeated, what you honor gets repeated, those kinds of things. And in essence, what this is saying is what you permit, what you allow to happen in a passive way, you're actually promoting it. So we as leaders have to create these guardrails and these I don't want to say rules and laws, because that's not what it is, but this framework of accountability and this framework of vision and those kinds of things. And so we're going to talk about some of that today. 3 things that impede your progress in moving your organization forward. And so, Christy, why don't you give us a little bit more background on that, and then we'll jump into the first idea.
Perfect. Well, I think as leaders, a lot of times there are some things that when we're looking down the road and we're like, why are we getting that? Why don't people understand the vision? Why aren't people doing their job? Why aren't we moving forward? Why are our sales so low? Why is everyone confused? And down the road, we experience these gaps in performance, or these gaps in progress, or these gaps in success. And we don't really understand why. We're trying to figure out what is it. And a lot of times it leads us to sometimes downgrading back into that 2.0 dictator leader, yep, where we get upset and frustrated with people because we're like, okay, listen, you do this, or maybe we hijack the project and we take it back ourselves, or it takes our ability from trusting our team to contribute, to make decisions, to delegate things to them, because we're like, well, I can do it better myself, or I've already thought through this, I need to just do this. And so it leads sometimes to regressive leadership, it leads to regressive teams, and it leads to regressive organizations where we're not really making progress, we're not really getting things done, and we feel frustrated because we're spinning our wheels, and we are experiencing some of the dysfunction that happens in organizations. And so when we're experiencing that dysfunction, a lot of times we ask that question, what's wrong? What's wrong with people? What's wrong with how things are going? And really today, this quote is such a great quote that allows us to go up even higher in that helicopter and say, hold on, what am I permitting? What am I permitting in my organization that I'm actually promoting because I'm permitting it? And a lot of times our dysfunctions or organizational challenges that happen further down in the organization, the ripple effects, have to do with what we as leaders are literally permitting. And so there's 3 common ones that we want to talk about today that are critical for progress in an organization, but are also very common that we accidentally permit these things in organization because they can be hard, they can be controversial, it can be easier to not do them initially. But really, they are 3 really strong nuggets that are continually topics that is what gets us off track.
Yep, exactly. And so the first one is, if you permit everybody to have their own vision, then there's no clarity there. They promote whatever they want or whatever they understand, and so that really can get you off track a great bit. One of the one of the kind of the benchmarks of vision and vision casting and kind of keeping that in front is I would say about every 90 days to keep to express that vision, to do something that is that helps the organization understand the vision, whether you mention it, whether it's in a video, or whether you have people stand up and share how they have lived out this vision, whatever it is, that you keep that vision in front. Otherwise, people will forget it. They'll forget the vision of the organization, and they'll just do whatever they think is right and do whatever they think they will do what they think the organization should do, as opposed to carrying out the overall vision and function of the organization. Right? That's kind of how we think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, too, I am going through, Simon Sinek is doing a book club on his book, The Infinite Game. And we had talked in our last episode about infinite and finite, which is something I've been thinking about really since this COVID situation is going on, because I really believe COVID is a perfect example of an infinite game. It is something with no start, no end, whatnot. So usually for our organizations, we want to have that infinite vision. And the infinite vision is not a finite game. Finite games are things that you win and lose. In our organizations, it is comprised of many finite games, whether we met budget or not, whether we hit sales or not, whether we finished a project or not. Those are all finite games. But ultimately, our finite games all lead to an overarching just cause and an infinite vision. Right. And so oftentimes as leaders, we have not actually done the work to understand what is the infinite goal. Sometimes we have gotten caught up into our work is just about profits. Our work is just about delivering XYZ results and growing the organization. Those are actual finite games, which is why COVID will create such frustration for people, because the rules have changed. And so we're no longer able to get traction. Right. But if you're able to rise up to what is that bigger infinite vision, we can reduce frustration and then recalibrate our finite goals and our finite tasks to that infinite vision. But as leaders, our mistake is sometimes, number one, we don't know what our infinite vision is. Mm-hmm. So we have to know what the infinite vision is. Second, like you said, a lot of times we are not saying it enough. And so when we're repeating that infinite vision, then our leaders and organizations know and understand why are they doing what they're doing, and they can align to that infinite vision. Otherwise, I very much agree. Everybody does as they see fit. And when you see that happening in an organization and people going in different directions, and it doesn't feel like we're all rowing in the same direction or we're all headed the same direction, a great question to ask yourself is, what am I permitting? Am I permitting everybody to have their own vision? Or do I have an infinite vision and a just cause that we're all bought into? And then people can take their finite games and drive those games.
No, absolutely. Sorry, my cat is on the desk there, and I thought it was about to eat my camera. No, absolutely. So underneath this infinite perspective, we are going to have those finite things. Like you said, we're going to have those projects that have to be done, but we have to constantly keep the infinite aspects of our organization in front of our people. Because if not, those finite projects become what's important within the organization, and not the overarching infinite framework.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So if we would desire progress, we want to promote that infinite vision and that larger direction so people can look for that, rather than permitting. And sometimes we do it because we think we're empowering people, but we want to empower people in how they do their work once we're all headed the same way. nobody's going to get anywhere if we're supposed to be driving north, but I let Joe drive east and I let Fred drive west and I let Sue drive south, but I'm trying to drive north. Of course, we're not going anywhere.
Right.
So we have to be on the same page that we're driving north, and then everybody gets to fulfill their role in the way that they see best as we're following that direction. But not being clear about that vision is absolutely a way that our organizations don't get the progress we desire.
Exactly. And that really does lead us into to the second piece, which is if you're not clear, if you permit ambiguity within the organization, within that infinite vision, then that's what you're going to get. The old adage, you reap what you sow. If you're not clear, it's not like everybody's going to understand it in a very clear way the same way. If you're ambiguous, then ambiguity will reign within your organization. And within that ambiguity, you're going to have a lot of uncertainty as well. So the goal here is to promote clear expectations, clear vision, clear goals, be clear and spend time and help other people. Even if you have to do this one-on-one, help them understand exactly what the overarching infinite framework, infinite goal is of the organization. Otherwise, people are just going to do whatever they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think personally, I have a thing with ambiguity. One of my personal values is direction and clarity, because I feel when there's not a clarity of direction, we tend to spin our wheels. We get confused why we're doing what we're doing. We get distracted when you're looking at whether it's your competition or whether, you were reading a book and you had a new great growth idea or a new marketing idea. We get confused with why we're doing what we're doing when there's ambiguity, when we don't really know why. And ambiguity is very common because our world is growing increasingly more complex.
Right.
And the more complex there is, the more complexity there is, the more easy it is for there to be ambiguity, because that complexity naturally creates ambiguity. And so as a leader, you must be teethy and tenacious to come down and say, why are we meeting? What is this meeting about? At the end of this meeting, what do we need to make a decision about? What do we need to have figured out? If somebody is being given a project, we want to be clear on what is your role in this project and why are you doing that? How does this line up to that infinite vision? And what does success look like? What does winning look like? What does a great execution of this look like? And so when we're clear on those expectations and we're clear on those goals, then people are set up to win because they know what they're doing. They know what they're in it for, versus when we feel bad about, we're like, oh man, this is taking forever to get to that agenda. Let's just move on. We'll figure it out as we go along. Wrong. That's ambiguity. Or as we assign a task and, they're like, okay, great. Do you got it? I think so. I'll let you know if I have any questions. Okay, great. Wrong. That's ambiguity. And so when we allow ambiguity and we are not tenacious to make sure that there's clarity, we will not have the progress that we desire. Right. And so if we want that progress, we have to make sure that it is clear.
Right. And now, we have talked about recently about, kind of being able to embrace the uncertainty that at some level, especially, all of us within COVID right now, we're living in very uncertain times. We don't know when school's starting. We don't know if, I don't know, I finally know when my son is going to be able to go to school. But I hear my wife talking about, she's a teacher. So they're supposed to do this, but now they're talking about special ed students starting here, and they're talking about this, and so there's all of these different things that are going on, and we do have to kind of be able to be flexible, to kind of embrace that uncertainty. But within that uncertainty, that doesn't mean we shouldn't have clarity.
Mhm.
We need to be clear about who we are as an organization, who we are as a group, and at least within that framework, we have a level of certainty that allows us to continue and do our jobs, so that we're just not sitting around doing nothing. And so even in those times of uncertainty, when as a country, sometimes we don't even know what's happening. It feels like we still have to have that clarity to move forward, have that level of security or level of certainty to move forward. We can't live life completely in an ambiguous state, because human nature is going to, in essence, just shut down. I'll do something when I know what to do. I'll do something when I have an end game. I'll do something when I have a clear picture of what's going to happen. So we have to be clear. We have to be concise. And again, even if that means going person to person in some cases, so that they understand what we're trying to promote, what we're trying to do, what the organization's trying to do, and what the infinite end game is, or the infinite game is, then we need to do that. We need everybody on the same page and clear about what's going on, so that they don't go off and try to do whatever they want to do, or they do nothing. Because when you have people working against you, against that goal, or against that framework, or against that vision, then there becomes a struggle. People get caught in the middle, and the organization really just sometimes stops. We've seen that happen, and whether it's a small organization or a large organization, that can happen when you kind of have those power struggles, or you just have people who don't want to do something because they don't know what to do. So clarity is important to move forward for progress. Not only personally, but corporately, organizationally as well.
Agree. I think another thing on that also is not only where people aren't doing things, but sometimes where they're doing the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm,
And it's
exactly.
not the wrong thing because they thought they were doing the wrong thing, but because it wasn't defined, which
Right.
then creates these ripple effects of feeling, it feels discouraging, and it feels like a waste of time. And frankly, it feels disrespectful. So if you're wasting my time, you asked me to do something, but now we're not going to use that because that's not really what you wanted, I feel disrespected. And now that erodes trust in our team. So a lot of times these first steps, or these first blocks that we put into things, we feel like we don't want to take too much time. We feel like we don't want to make a big deal about it.
Right.
But these things are fundamental for setting people up for success. That says, this is so important. I don't want to waste your time, and I do respect you, and you are important. So let's make sure we're on the same page. And sometimes too, that's even about definitions, that we're using the same words, but we have a different understanding.
Yep.
All of that is ambiguity. There's so much ambiguity today that helps us or the point of it is just to come back and be like, are we clear? Are we clear in what we're talking about? Are we clear in the direction we're headed? Are we clear in our agreements of what success looks like? It's not that we need to break it down on, are we clear on how you're going to do this? No, you have to empower people, but we have to be headed that same direction, and that we're very clear on what we're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So the third point is, or the third idea is, if you permit avoidance, or if there's this lack of conflict and surface discussions, or radical candor, or tough truth, if you permit that, then you're promoting. You're not promoting follow-up and accountability, and so you're not really promoting this idea that things need to get accomplished. And so sometimes we have to have those tough talks. Sometimes we have to to have candor in our discussions with others, and that's tough. on the Enneagram, you have level 9, which is the peacekeeper, and those people really struggle with that because you want everything you want to keep the peace, and so you try to find this middle way, and that, but we get paid. If we get paid, to have those conversations. We have to have those conversations, because if not, then things don't get done. Accountability is very necessary. And so if you share with someone, here's a project, I want you to lead it, I want you to go take care of it, and you don't follow up on that, if you just let it slide, just let them do it when they want to do it, how they want to do it, where they want to do it, then you're not going to see that organization move forward. And being in that case, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is scary because you don't know what's going on. So there is this need to follow up. There is this need in some cases to have those tough conversations and to hold people accountable. And sometimes that means letting people go. And sometimes that means having a tough talk.
Absolutely. I think sometimes we have created personal development of people being made out of sugar cubes. Like, we can't have these real conversations because we're afraid of hurting people's feelings. Yeah. And whatever. And to me, I'm going to credit that to people not really being trained well at communication and giving constructive feedback in a positive way, and really not having the trust before they lambast somebody with feedback. Lambasting is never okay. That is not what real feedback is. But because we've had these bad experiences with accountability, or these bad experiences with a candid conversation that needs to give some real feedback in order to help things upgrade, and we avoid those conversations, we don't say them. And so we kind of live with this low grade dysfunction constantly happening in our organizations, because everyone just kind of chooses to turn their head and pretend that we don't know that that's a problem, to pretend we don't see everybody not following that rule or that safety protocol or whatever it is. And we just choose to not address it. And leaders oftentimes want to have a great relationship with their team, and we confuse how to have a great relationship with your team. And we think having a great relationship comes from being nice and comes from being somebody's friend, rather than, and we think accountability means that we're the jerk, we're the person with the stick, and we're the mean dog. Yeah. Well, no, when you hold someone accountable, it actually says that the job that you have really matters. And it matters enough that I'm going to follow up and see how that's going. And you matter enough that if you're stuck or having a hard time with it, I care about that, because I want you to be successful at work and I care how you're doing. So I'm not just going to hold you accountable at the, 12.9 hour when it's due and it's like, oh my goodness, you didn't understand the project and now it's a fire drill. But if I have a great relationship with my team, accountability has regular follow-up, and it has regular check-in, and it has regular conversation around what's working, what's not working. What do you need to support you? How can I support you? What would make this go better? Where are you getting stuck? What ideas do you need? What resources do you need? So accountability doesn't ignore the follow-up. Accountability is simple follow-up to what we were talking about before, which is the clear expectations, which is what we were talking about before, which supports the infinite game. So if we're all headed north, this is our North Star, this is the ultimate thing that we're going for, this is our just cause that we all care about in this organization. Now we're clear on everybody's role and task in order to achieve that. And now we're going to go ahead and follow up, and accountability becomes this really evil word about, like the old-fashioned teacher, like you're naughty. No, accountability is simple follow-up that says your role really matters. Where are we at? Great. What support do you need? Awesome. Let me get that for you. But instead,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, instead, I think because we don't want to be bad, or because we don't want to be a jerk, we we avoid those conversations because we're afraid they're going to be a conflict.
Yeah.
And so many of these things have the negative repercussions we don't want. So if you avoid having the conversation, I can almost guarantee you it's going to end up in a conflict. Versus if you simply do the follow-up and the accountability, now you can catch things before they're going to be a crucial fire drill and conflict. So it's interesting how when we have these bad habits of avoidance or these surface discussions where we really can't have truth, that's where that comes from. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, so I think this really kind of ties into some things we've also talked about in the past about feedback loops. That this is nothing more than just a feedback loop, and if you do it with everyone, then no one thinks you're picking on them, right? If you're consistent, and that becomes a very big word, consistency. If we are consistent across the board, where we're asking everyone for their feedback, and we're talking to everyone in essence the same way, then I think that gives us it helps people feel like that they're not being attacked. It's just we're just asking for feedback, and so some of that is obviously how we frame it, but we have to do it. We have to get feedback. Like for instance, right now I'm in the middle of the busiest season in my job, working with schools, trying to get them ready to go for the start of school. And every week we have a feedback call where I'm getting feedback on what's been done, or I'm watching what's been done even during the week, and asking questions during the week. Was this done? Was this done? And they know that my team knows that I follow up with them. I go behind and just make sure all the settings are right, that I'm kind of doing that. And my hope and my goal is not to point one out, but to just expect that people have a job to do, and I need you to do it because it's important. It's important to me. It's important that I gave you that task in the first place. And more importantly, it's important to the stakeholders, our sales reps, our districts that we work with, because ultimately that's going to come back on the company. So you have these feedback loops, and for some people, it's in my case right now, it's every week. When that season is over, we'll go to every 2 weeks or every month, just depending on our volume. But that's where you kind of, as a leader, where you make that decision. How often do I feel like we need that feedback? How often can I go with not knowing what's going on? It's maybe, now you can, obviously you can take that to extremes in other ways, right? You can want feedback every single day, and that becomes overkill. That doesn't give people freedom. So that goes back into the 2.0 concept, but it's just, you kind of have to set those feedback loops, but we need those feedback loops because otherwise things get dropped, they get pushed through the cracks, and we get to maybe the end of a project and nothing is working, right? So those things happen, and we have to be aware of that, and we have to know that, and we have to work through that. So anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I think your last point there too is really about checkpoints, which goes back in that number 2 about ambiguity. So if we do a task and we never co-design, when are we checking in? What are our checkpoints? What are our milestones? What are our indicators if we're moving in the right direction? That would be another example of something that's ambiguous versus clear. So if we have clear, okay, well, this is today, we have 1 month to do this. Let's check in at the end of each week. So we'll have a Friday check-in, see how it's going. Here's our measurables of success.
Right.
Great. Now nobody's going to feel peppered with over feedback or over micromanagement because you've co-designed the checkpoints. But that right there is another really great example of ambiguity versus clarity. And then the other piece that you were saying, it reminds me so much. I was on a webinar the other day that Patrick Lencioni was a guest on, and he was talking about teams. And of course, he's got the great books, The 5 Dysfunctions of the Team is one that came out end of 19 or beginning of 2020. Motive is a really great one, really nails it for leaders. If you haven't read that as a leader, read Motive, because he really calls you to toe on this is leadership and this is not. And he addresses some of the violations that we sometimes do as leaders. But going back to what you were saying about this development is sometimes we want to be nice by avoiding the tough conversations, rather than, to your point, with feedback loops, a leader has the opportunity to lead by creating the tough conversations and saying, give me feedback. How am I doing? Yeah. I want to know. And in this webinar with Patrick Lencioni, he was talking about kind of the classic CEO where they do the 360 and the 360 comes back and it says that this leader is horrible at whatever it is, micromanagement or whatever. I don't remember what his example was. And then the leader gets in the meeting and he's like, hey, so it seems like on the feedback that somebody says that I'm really bad with accountability. Can someone expand on that? What were we talking about? And the room is silent because they know he's going to get ticked. And then someone speaks up and they're like, well, I don't really think you're bad with accountability. And then someone else chimes in, yeah, I think you're pretty good at that. And he goes, oh, that's what I thought. All right, let's move on. And Patrick Lencioni, as he's telling the story, right, he's talking about him in this situation and how he just kind of shirks because obviously a very bad example of that growth, right? And the ability for the leader, he is role modeling horrible radical candor, horrible crucial conversations, because essentially he said, don't tell me the truth. Tell me the truth in the 360. But then when we have the chance to talk about it, don't bring it up because you're going to hurt my feelings. So we promote these surface organizations versus if he had the guts to really understand, hey, I got this feedback and I'm really thankful for that. Help me understand how I can do that better. I'm not even actually aware of how I'm doing that. So I need you guys to really take a risk and share that with me. I'm not going to get upset because I want to grow. I want to develop. And these are how we develop attributes and critical skills for leadership. So when we avoid things on a simple level, we're missing accountability. On a deeper level, we cannot grow the attributes that are needed to be strong leaders to really accomplish that vision that we're ultimately setting out to do. So this third point is really critical, and we like to be super squishy with it and just kind of forget that we need to do this. We like to keep it on the nice, and it doesn't have to be mean, but it gets ugly. There water cooler talk and gossip and all of that happens when these are not happening.
Exactly. Absolutely. Well, so we're getting to kind of the end of our time. So let's recap just real quick. So if you permit everyone to have their own vision, then you're not going to move the organization forward. We need to have everybody on the same page, and we need to make sure we're communicating that vision, that there's clarity on that vision, and then everybody's moving in the same direction. Number two, that if you permit ambiguity, then you're going to get ambiguity, that the lack of clarity is destructive within an organization. Donald Miller, kind of his tagline, and I have forgotten the
Story brand?
Yeah, for Story brand is clarity. Ambiguity is in essence horrible for an organization. Clarity is king, that you have to be clear about what's going, about communicating and about what you're trying, the direction that the organization is trying to go. So don't permit that ambiguity, because in essence you're promoting that ambiguity. Promote clear expectations, a clear agenda, a clear set of goals. And then third, if you permit avoidance, then you're going to get that in return. So we need to have those tough conversations. We need to have candor. And if we're going to have progress, we have to have follow-up. We have to have accountability. We have to have feedback. And so those all really do tie in together, and they're important for us as leaders to think about, and then not only think about, but to put into action. Anything else that you want to mention today, Christy? Or
well, just with the leaders that are listening, thank you for listening and joining us. We're curious, which one of these is the easiest for you? Which one is the hardest? Sometimes it's just, maybe it's not hard, we just forget it,
right.
and don't practice it as much. So just kind of looking, and make a comment in the notes, share with us, let us know which is easiest, which is hardest. And if you have tricks that have helped you or books that have helped you, share those with other leaders so we can all learn together.
Absolutely. All righty. Well, thanks for joining us today. We look forward to having you on the next podcast. Don't forget to visit our website, innovativeleader.co. Go to Apple or Google Play or anywhere where you find your podcast and subscribe there. And we're also on YouTube as well. So hope you have a great week, and we look forward to being with you again next time.
Sounds good.
Take care. All right. Bye.